And good evening and welcome to another edition of the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. I am Chad Holmes, joined by former Wausau West head football coach Jason Foster for the swan song of our fall. You've made it, I think this is, if I labeled it 14 weeks, but last week we didn't have a show because I decided to go on vacation, and frankly, at this point last Wednesday, I was sitting in the United Center, and I'm not sad that I was there instead of here. Needed that time to get ready for the winter high school sports season, but one more time here to talk a little bit of football and also a touch of some winter high school sports as well, but good to have you on board as we get to the final couple of days of the high school football season.
Yeah, pretty amazing how quickly it's gone, and a very interesting season, and awesome to be able to talk about a local team who's playing for their third straight gold ball tomorrow.
And we are going to get a chance to hear from the head coach of that local team, the Edgar Wildcats, as they get set to take on Darlington tomorrow in the Division 6 state championship game. Coming up, we'll have an opportunity to hear from Jerry Sinz, the head football coach of Edgar. And I got to give Coach Sinz a lot of credit to be able to come and talk to me, because we set it up last night at 8 o'clock because they were heading to Madison today. And, of course, they play pretty early tomorrow, the second game. But it's really great of him to take a little time to be with us here right before the championship game.
Yeah, I think there's so many positive things you can say about Edgar football. I was actually talking to somebody who wasn't from the area and was talking about interviewing Coach Sinz in Edgar football. And when you think about it from the context of somebody who doesn't know and understand or have been around for it, it's truly remarkable or borderline unbelievable how long he's been doing at the level of success and just the consistency of what they do and how they do it and what they've accomplished. Obviously, a very well-oiled machine. They turn kids over year to year. It's a program. It's run. The coaching staff has been together a really long time, and I mean, definitely a formula for success. And the other thing I think it is a little bit of it. We talked about this last year with Stratford, and here Edgar is, right? Competitive balance. Gets bumped up a division, playing in the state championship in Division 6. You know what I mean? So got bumped up and still there. So probably not going to be happy about their point total because it's going to keep them there for a minute. But the opportunity to win a third straight gold ball and to do it in a higher division is pretty amazing.
And we actually talk a little bit about that, and he makes a good point considering who's in the Division 7 championship game. So it's basically, he's saying, hey, would have not been much easier over in Division 7 this year, but we'll talk about that coming up. Jerry Sinz will be with us at the bottom of the hour. Our student-athlete guest for this week is Evelyn Tomey. She's from Wausau East High School. She is a senior. She was second-team all-conference this fall in volleyball, and last season in basketball, she was an honorable mention all-conference performer for the Jacks. So we'll talk about the volleyball season, look ahead to see what is on tap for Wausau East in high school girls basketball as well with Evelyn Tomey from the Lumberjacks. She'll be with us to start off hour number 2 at 7:06. But let's finally... last time we'll talk about some football results until next August, which will be here sooner than we expect because of the way it's going. But last week we only had a couple of area teams involved in state semifinal play and division. Let's start with Division 6. Let's start with Edgar, and they played Mondovi. And Edgar, like they have the entire playoff run, it's not been easy, but boy, when the chips have been down, they've been able to make the plays. They defeated Mondovi 21-14. Edgar 13-0, Mondovi 11-2. Mondovi was able to avenge their loss to Regis from the regular season a couple of weeks ago. So outstanding team. Up to that point, their only loss was to Regis on a Hail Mary pass, or otherwise they would have been perfect on the season. They finished at 11-2. Maverick Butt had 18 rushes for 93 yards and a touchdown. Tucker Strite, 7 rushes, 79 yards, touchdown. 2 of 5 passing, 31 yards, 12 tackles on defense. 231 yards rushing, 6.1 yards rushing per carry as a team. Pretty even in terms of yardage, 287 to 266. And when it was 21-14 late, they got a big stop as Mondovi tried to get a score that, who knows, as I was watching it, actually I was wondering, well, will they go for 2 or not? Right. But in the end, for the third time in 4 playoff games, a 1-score win for Edgar.
Yeah, and what is the formula? We talk about this all the time when we get to the playoffs, and what gets you down to Madison, and it's really good defense and the ability to run the football, and they did exactly that. And I think one of the keys for Edgar is kind of that two-headed attack running the football. I think when you have a really good running back, as they always do, and most certainly with Maverick Budd is no exception. But when your other running back is your quarterback, I mean, that's tough to defend, and they're very efficient and they're very effective in doing that. And then they play really good defense. I mean, it's crazy to think that you kind of raise your eyebrow a little bit when Edgar gives up 14 points, because it seems like a lot. But, I mean, that is it. I think Edgar's formula for success for 40-plus years is to play fantastic defense and score enough points to win. And I think when it comes to winning that third straight state championship, that's exactly what it has to be. I mean, they can't turn the ball over and give any extra scores or any big plays or any special teams, because their formula is to score 21, 14, 21, maybe 28 points in a really good offensive night, but then hold the opponent to 6, 14 points to win. And they've done that very successfully. I think the other takeaway I have from this game, and maybe shame on me, shame on us, but we spent a ton of time talking this year, deservedly so, about Treve Stoffel and what he did at Mosinee. I think Tucker Strait is pretty much the equivalent at Edgar. I mean, when you look at what he does from the quarterback position and then what he flips around and does on the defensive side of the ball, that is definitely an Edgar football name, and he's definitely lived up to both his name and that Edgar football tradition of toughness.
And Coach Sinz has some very interesting things to say about him in our conversation coming up in just a little bit. So some high praise, I'll say that, as a preview for what's coming up. And again, the close games. That's the thing that's kind of jumped out to me in this playoff run, because every time they've had that moment where you could wilt, whether it was when Loyal Greenwood scored with under a minute to go in regulation to tie it, and then they were able to get a good kickoff return and then score on the very first play to win 21-14. The game against Bonduel, an 8-7 game, and now this one against probably the best team they played. I would say that Mondovi, the way that they played this year over in the Clover Belt, was as impressive as anything. It was a 14-0 lead for Edgar, then it was 14-14, and then at that point again, they just responded after they got tied. It seems as though when the chips were down up to this point, they've always had an answer.
Yeah, and I think we talk about one of the struggles that they have, even more so compared to Stratford, is they don't have a ton of challenges in their regular season, right? A couple games this year that were probably closer than maybe a couple of years past, but ultimately there's a lot of blowouts, there's a lot of shutouts, there's a lot of...
But they give up 12 points total in the regular season.
Right, there's the ability to play a lot of guys in the second half who aren't your starters and do that. So when you get to these tough games that require the whole 48 minutes in order to be successful, they've really stepped up this year, because they didn't have those sorts of challenges in the regular season. So obviously another fantastic job of coaching, but ultimately another great job of execution by those student athletes.
Division 5, the dream of another state championship came to an end for Stratford. It was a battle, but Northwestern in the end defeated Stratford 22-13. Northwestern perfect at 13-0. Stratford saw their 10-game win streak end, finish at 10-3. Brooks Vanderhoof he's been carrying the bread a lot this season for Stratford. He did it again last week. 31 rushes, 163 yards. Brady Berg completed 6 of 13 for 90 yards and a touchdown. Colton Bright, 3 catches for 55 yards. Jager Ormond, 10 tackles for Stratford. But a young man named Tyson Teal turned out to be the big play guy for Northwestern. 3 catches, 147 yards, and 2 touchdowns. In fact, all 3 completed passes as Camden Kroll, 3 of 4 passing, 147 yards and 2 touchdowns for Northwestern. It was an interesting season for Stratford. I mean, again, I know that when they lost those first 2 games, there was a little nervousness. But boy, again, when things got a little hairy, you love to see the way that they did battle back. They won some really close games. I still remember that overtime game at Wittenberg. That was, I think, one of their biggest wins of the year. In the end, again, ultimately a very successful season for Stratford.
Yeah, unbelievable. 3 straight state championships and a runner-up finish. I mean, I think a lot of people will look at that 10-3 record, and if you're looking at it through the lens of Stratford football, both historically and in recent history, there are probably some folks who wear that orange and black Tiger gear who would consider that record maybe not as successful as they would like. But ultimately, when you look at the body of work, where they started, where they got to, one game, one score and a half away from competing for another gold ball, I think there's a ton to be happy about and proud of in Stratford. I think one of the other differences is how hard it was to get those 10 wins, right? I mean, we talked about the other teams in that conference where Wittenberg took them, was it overtime or at least right down to the wire?
Overtime.
Amherst we thought was going to run away with the conference at one point this year and got that huge win. And then the battles during the playoffs. I think there's a lot to be proud. There's a lot to build on. And probably now the ability to return these guys who have that experience and are hungry. But just, I mean, we talk about it. Yep, probably a little bit of a letdown for Stratford and the community and the history and the tradition. But there are a lot of football teams in the state of Wisconsin who'd be pretty darn excited to finish 10-3 and be one game away from a state championship game.
And last week was the 8-player championship game, and these are a couple of teams that I've saw in the past. But in the Cloverwood Conference, when Newman was playing over there, and Newman will be playing Gilman again next year with a realignment of 8-player football, and generally football, the conference realignment. But McDonald, they're heading back to 11-player because, doggone it, they got a lot of kids, and they had a lot of good-looking kids, and they were able to avenge a loss during the regular season, defeat Gilman 22-0. Both teams finished 12-1. Dawson Moulton, 32 rushes, 147 yards, 11 tackles, an interception on defense. Cale Holm had 13 of 18 passing, 168 yards, 3 touchdowns for McDonald. Logan Halida, 12 rushes, 63 yards, 7 of 17 passing, 49 yards, and an interception for Gilman. But the thing that jumps out to me, number one, I saw McDonald play in the state semifinal. They played over at Steam a couple of weeks back. Big numbers and also big kids.
Yeah.
I was not surprised in the sense I did pick Gilman because I thought, hey, Gilman beat them the first time and they were undefeated. But McDonald just physically was a very impressive-looking crew. And the numbers matter. Again, and it's not a criticism when you say, well, team had a lot more numbers. Well, that's a sign of a good program when you are able to get the kids to come out. But, boy, you as a coach know it so very well that when you have those kind of numbers, especially with the talent behind it as well, that was you use it, you win championships.
Right, and first and foremost, I mean, congratulations to them, right? State championship.
And a shutout in 8-player football in a championship game, that is
incredible.
Very rare.
Against an undefeated team who had already beat you once that year. So you I mean, there's a lot of things at play there we could talk about. Obviously, incredible accomplishment. They played 8-player football.
Yep.
Did it very, very well, won their gold ball. But I think one of the things that gets missed is that people go to 8-player football for all the reasons. And we've talked about the myths of that before on this show about whatever, easier or whatever. But truly, it almost always comes down to numbers, right? And I guess on the flip side, I give McDonald a ton of credit. And there's probably a lot of other teams out there who are striving for the same thing, right? Like you play 8-player football and you have success, and if that's what your numbers warrant, it's great football, and you play it, and that's what you know as football in high school. If your numbers get to a point where you can go back to playing 11-player football, you do it. And I think a big part of making that decision and doing it, or going the other way from 11 to 8 you got to kind of look at your program over a course of time and like what your
and the school
and your numbers in the future, what your enrollment is, what the trends are, and for McDonald to be able to do that and look at it and make the commitment to going back to 11-man football. I don't know what it means from a conference standpoint. I can imagine it's a nightmare or a headache we talked last year with the CWC small losing a team this year, losing one next year, and what that's going to do and all that stuff. But congratulations to them, and I give them a lot of credit for making that jump back to 11-player next year, and definitely kind of opens the door up again in 8-man football. There will not be a repeat next year.
Actually, in that new conference, Newman moves over there. Assumption from 11 to 8-player, along with teams like Gilman and Owen Withy and Thorpe. Again, it's basically the old Cloverwood Conference. It really is.
And it'll be a really tough conference. It should make for some great matchups. Last thing I would say about those games, too, when you talk about a really good Mondovi team, and the fact that they beat Regis. I'll be interested.
That's where McDonald's going, actually.
And I will be very interested to hear if Coach Sinz said anything about that as well. Like, I would imagine when the very first thing when they knew they were going D6 was they were back in the same division with their old foe Regis and having to play Regis to get to state. And we know what a phenomenal program they have. So when Mondovi beat Regis, psychologically, that was probably a plus for Edgar.
God.
But what a great program Mondovi has in order to get to that point.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't ask it specifically that way, and that's why, again, I said I missed you last night because it was an odd timing. But we're going to talk about the championship games in a little bit, but we're going to take a quick timeout, take a 1-minute break, then come back. We will set up our interview with Coach Jerry Sinz, again, our coach guest for this week, as he gets his team ready for tomorrow's state championship game in Division 6 against Darlington. So we'll come back in a minute with Coach Jerry Sinz here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO.
Are you an enthusiastic sports fan? Want to have fun and get in on the action?
Heck, yes. That'd be awesome.
Have great attention to detail? Want to stay active?
Definitely.
Want to give back to the student athletes in your community?
Obviously, yes.
Then you'd make an excellent high school sports official. We need more officials in Wisconsin, because with no high school officials, there are no high school sports. Sign up today at highschoolofficials.com.
A game without a crowd is just a scrimmage. A performance without an audience is just a rehearsal. Without your presence, high school sports and the performing arts aren't possible. Ensure that these essential extracurricular activities continue to enrich the lives of students in Wisconsin. Purchase a ticket to your local high school's game or performance.
This message presented by the WIAA and the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association.
Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO on the Civic Media app. And also, again, you can catch us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and the 98.9 WXCO channel to be able to see the show and hear the show as well. With Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes. Again, we will have our student athlete guest for this week coming up at 7:06. Evelyn Tomey from the Wausau East Lumberjacks, both volleyball and basketball. She'll be with us at 7:06. And coming up here in just a moment, we'll hear from Jerry Sinz, the head football coach of Edgar. How long have you known Jerry Sinz?
Known of him for a very long. Actually have a story to tell. Maybe at some point when we have extra time about how close Jerry came to being the head football coach at Wausau West at one point, and it was actually my senior year in high school when Mike Dressler came to West. He was kind of the other, and I was told that story firsthand from his son Jason, who I coached with at Wausau West. So known of Jerry forever, all the way back to when I played high school football. Started to get to know Jerry when I came back to Wausau and started coaching at West 14 years ago.
What's the most impressive thing about him in your mind as a coach?
The most impressive thing about him is what he does on defense, and I think that I'm a defensive guy through and through, and I think Coach Sinz is as well. I'm certainly not putting myself in that same category because he's obviously phenomenal, but a couple seasons at West when we were not fortunate enough to be in the playoffs, Coach Nowinski and myself went over and watched some of Edgar's practices. So to watch how they do it and what they do, and it truly is a machine. And it's not him as a drill sergeant out there barking. It's the respect that those student athletes have for him and what they're doing in that program, and that things are just about automatic. From the way they take attendance at the beginning of practice to the way they break into their drills and it's extremely efficient, and he's got a winning formula, and he does it the same. He hands us a practice plan when we get to practice, and at the top of it, it says practice number, insert number here, 87. So every year for 40 plus years, for all I know, these were made on a typewriter. He hands you a practice plan that says practice 87. Well, this is what we do on Tuesdays in level 3 of the playoffs every single year. And that was that regardless of opponent. Obviously, they scout, they do all the things. Of course they do. But what makes them so special is they focus on what they do well. So they continue to do in the playoffs a 1 day a week tackling circuit, 1 day a week blocking circuit. And not for your linemen and not for your linebackers. Every player in the program does those basic skills all the way through to the state championship game. The other great thing about it is every player in the program is invited to keep coming to practice to the end. So freshman kids who probably didn't see any time on varsity the whole year, if you come to practice every day, you get to ride the bus and stand on the sideline of state champs. So that tradition just rolls. I remember the first time we ever went to one of their practice, there was about a half a dozen kids, probably in the age range of 6 to 10. Half of them had mohawks. Half of them looked like they'd been lifting for 4 years already. And they were kind of like running around like you'd want kids to do at practice, playing on the dummies and doing stuff like that. And when the team started doing drills and those kids were kind of over there screwing around, it actually wasn't Coach Sinz, it was Coach Strite, who I think one of them probably was even one of his sons, probably one of the ones, maybe their quarterback now. And he's like, basically, I won't use the exact language that was used here, but basically, stop screwing around over there, get to a drill and learn something. And they scattered like rats. And pretty soon these 6 to 8 year old kids are now standing and watching a high school football drill, intently learning it, watching their idols. So it's all about tradition, and it's all about those kids passing it not passing it from the seniors to the freshmen, but passing it from high schoolers all the way down to elementary school kids. And I think that's a pretty special thing.
All right. Well, let's listen in because, again, last night did the girls' basketball game and then ran back over here. And after 8 o'clock, able to get Coach Jerry Sinz before heading off to Madison for tomorrow's state championship game. So here is the head coach of the Edgar Wildcats, Jerry Sinz.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
Well, let's jump right into the season itself because there's you've had back-to-back state championships and being able to have so much success, but this year moved up to Division 6 and yet able to start the season off with some great non-conference competition as you do with Stratford and the like. What has the season generally been like? What were the expectations when you and your guys started practice back in the summer?
Well, the guys that are seniors, we have several of them that played on a 2023 state team. And, of course, then last year they were juniors and playing, and they kind of got this idea that they wanted to see if they could go 3 years in a row. And then after we won it last year, of course, then it became we want to see if we can win it 3 years in a row because we've been to state a couple other times, 3 or 4 years in a row, but we'd like win one, lose one, or whatever, win one, and win two, and lose one. So we've never won 3 in a row. So that was kind of the goal of some of the guys that are seniors, and we've been pretty fortunate. We pulled out a lot of close games, but some of that's just, their resiliency and determination to try to achieve the goal they set, I think.
You said it. I mean, this run, especially in the playoffs, you had a regular season where I think it was fairly straightforward. You had, again, started the year off, you had that big win against Stratford, consistently not giving up very many points during the course of the season into the playoffs as well. And then you get to the postseason, and these 4 games, you've had 3 one-score games. I mean, you said it, that is there some sort of special resiliency within this group? Because to win 1 or 2 playoff games by 1 score, some cases 1 point, is very special. To do it 3 different times where the game is on the line in the 4th quarter. What have you seen from your guys in these playoff games, especially the 1-score games, that make you probably as proud as anybody in terms of what these guys have been able to accomplish?
Yeah, well, we never lose sight of our goal or anything like that. They just pretty much hang in there. Especially, like I say, the first game against Loyal Greenwood, they ended up tying it up with only 50-something seconds left in the game. And we just came right back and ended up scoring with first or second play of offense after the kickoff return and got the lead. And then, of course, had to hold them. But And of course, kind of the same thing happened against Mondovi. We were up 14-0, but they came back tied at 14-14, and so we obviously had to come back and answer, and we were able to do that. So yeah, they never give up. They never, like I say, panic or anything like that. So that's been a good sign.
Just want to pick your brain a little bit, because I think especially that game against Loyal Greenwood the first week, where, as you said, they scored with under a minute to go, and all of a sudden a team that was an 8 seed and you're number 1 seed. I think everybody was outside of course, your locker room and everybody else in that general area when it comes to the guys who actually do the job, thinking, oh, they've struggled coming down the stretch. They've been banged up a little bit, and yet they came out and played a great football game. For you and your coaches, when you get into a situation like that, do you say anything to the guys, or do you just basically count that they have gone through this? They have gone through the journey of a season, the journey of a high school football career. How much do you get involved in a situation like that when it's 14-14, under a minute to go in the game, and Loyal Greenwood's about to kick off? Or do you let the guys take care of business themselves? I think a lot of people would be curious about that.
Well, we thought we knew what they were going to do in the kickoff. We have 2 seniors who are 2 senior starting running backs back on the kickoff return, and then we have a sophomore kid back there as the third guy. We have 3 guys deep, and so we were pretty certain they were going to kick to the sophomore, and so that was our kickoff return plan. Hey, they're probably going to kick the ball to you. Here's what we're going to do: make sure you catch it in the air and get moving full speed as fast as you can, and of course, the guy kicked it right to him, and he took it up the sideline and got across to 50, which is a heck of a good return. And so now we had, there's only 40-something seconds left, but we had some timeouts left, and we had good field position. I think we scored in either our first or second play, though. We have a few special plays that we save for situations like that. And so we called one, and then sure enough, we connected on it and got the touchdown. And so then we still had to hold them a little bit at the end because there was still about 30 seconds left. But and then kind of the same thing at Mondovi, or at Stanley against Mondovi the other night. Actually, the 1-point game against Bondwell. That game, we had 2 long touchdowns called back in that game on penalties. We had another long gain where we had a penalty too. We only had 4 penalties, but 3 of them were on 3 of our biggest offensive plays of the game. So that kept that one. We really thought that game should have been like 22-7, but the kids, of course, just once again just hung in there and kept playing hard, and we didn't say a whole lot different, no.
Well, let me ask you about last week's game, because Mondovi, what a season they had. I mean, before that game, their only loss came on a Hail Mary play against Regis earlier in the campaign, and you knew how good they were after they had won their big game the week before. You came out, took the 14-0 lead, then they did come back and make it 14-14, and yet again it was the response almost immediately. It feels like your group does not allow that momentum to continue for the opposing group. How important was it just right away to be able to respond when Mondovi was able to get back to even?
Yeah, that was a big play. That was kind of an option situation. We actually called the dive, but the quarterback has the option to keep it if he wants to, or to pitch it. But most of the time when we call the dive, he just runs the dive, but he saw the linebacker blitzing right into the dive hole, so he just pulled the ball, surprised our halfback too, because he thought he was going to give it, but kept it and hit that hole, and of course it surprised Mondovi too, I think, and he just ended up taking it, and it was a great call by Tucker. He ran it just about perfect. When you watch it on film, it completely surprised a couple of the Mondovi defenders, and I ended up taking it all away, and of course that gave us a big lift. But to their credit, they drove it right back down again and got inside, I think, to 15 before we got them in a 4th and 6 situation, and then they kind of mishandled the ball. I think they were going to run an end around pass or something. and luckily we recovered it, and then we're able to hold on.
Again, we're talking to Edgar Wildcat head football coach Jerry Sinz here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. Before we talk about your championship matchup, let's talk about your team generally, some of the guys on this team that have been so successful. Let's start on the defensive side. One of the things that jumped out in terms of looking at your team during the course of the year, and even this week looking at your team's numbers, getting ready to talk to you, is the number of kids on the defensive side that have made plays in terms of tackles and tackles for losses and sacks and interceptions. It looks like up and down that defense, kids have been making plays all season.
Yeah, well, our defensive secondary is very experienced. 2-3 of those guys started in 2023 when we won the state title. And of course, then they all played there last year too. We kind of talked about that the other day, that when a guy plays 14 games a year, well, those kids get 20 extra practices each year, so they're now up to about 60 extra practices, and they also, of course, get 5 extra games each year. So there's like 15 extra games. So yeah, they've got a lot of extra work in. They're very heady guys. Most of them are 3.9, 4.0 GPA type guys. They're good friends. They hang around together. They communicate well. And generally, unless one of them just takes a chance, which we've done a couple times, we just don't allow many big plays. But we took one chance against Mondovi, and they caught us with the tight end up the seam when strong safety was cheating up a little too far. And another team, I think that Marquette Academy team from Illinois caught us in that same type of a situation. So we said, we got to be a little more careful. But the defensive line has, some guys in there with some experience. None of them are big. They're small guys overall. I mean, we got one guy who weighs 200 pounds in defense. A lot of guys in 175, 180, 185 pound category. They fly around pretty good. But, they've done a great job all year.
You mentioned that these are smart kids. You said 3.9, 4.0 kids, good kids, friends. How much easier does it make your job, the job of the coaching staff and everybody involved, when you have that kind of kid and have many of those kind of kids? Because, I mean, some programs have talented kids and maybe they're just not, in terms of that, I would call it team first and buddy first and everything else. I imagine having those kind of kids makes your job a lot easier.
Oh, yeah, they study film a lot together, and they take notes, and they quiz each other on them. I'm sure on the way down in the bus tomorrow, they're going to have a packet of stuff, and they're going to be sitting next to, one of their teammates. We encourage them to sit next to a guy who plays the same position you do. And, they'll be going over all the situations and personnel groupings and formations and, hey, what are they likely to do out of this? What are they likely to do out of that? And what are we going to call and how are we going to rotate? And so on. So by the time the games come around, they're pretty well versed in what the opponent's going to do.
During the course of the season, when we do our recaps every week, and me and Coach Foster talking about things, and for the most part, your team never blows you off the page when it comes to offensive numbers. But it seems as though when you need plays being made, when you need, whether it's a drive-sustaining run or whether you need a big play with your pass game, or even, as you said, having that little bit of a gadget play available to make a big play, it looks like, again, from the outside, that your offense, while it doesn't blow you away often, boy, they've been very good in big situations. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. We generally, especially if we're playing teams that are good, we try to just control the ball and keep it away from them to make it a little easier on our defense. One of my favorite things is guys, they can't score if we got the ball. And so we're not overly concerned about scoring points, but we're concerned about trying to keep the ball away from them if they have very high-powered offenses. And I think sometimes that gets under, because teams have beaten us that way too in the past when we've had really good offenses. They'll just they'll just try to get 2, 3, 4 yards of play forever and just keep the ball away from you, so you only have about 4 or 5 possessions the whole game. So that's kind of part of our plan too, and generally it seems to work pretty well. We emphasize defense a little more than offense, so if a guy can only start one way, well, he probably starts in defense. If he's good enough to start 2 ways, all right, then maybe you can start in offense and defense.
And you've got a few of them that are really good both on offense and defense. And again, Maverick Butt this year, 1,167 yards rushing. You got Maurer with 730. Those are two guys it's good to lean on when you do want to control the football, right?
Yeah, they're both good runners. Mav was our leading rusher last year too. He had over 1,000 yards a year ago, I think, and he actually had, I think, 27, 28 touchdowns last year. And this year, I think he's only got like maybe 17 or 18. But once again, he doesn't care, and none of them really care about individual stats. If they do, well, then they're probably on the wrong team, because we never stress that much. It's always about team first and individual stuff second.
Have you had any issues like that? I'm just curious because you say that, because over the years it always sounds like those are the kind of kids and maybe the kind of families and the kind of community that you have. Have you had any of those kind of issues in the past? Because in this era especially, you often hear about some of the issues that come up, whether it's within these programs. Is it just a case where the idea that the tradition has always been there, the way things have been done, they've been done so successfully, has helped from generation to generation, from class to class, to keep the kids in that mindset that it is team first and that it's not about what the numbers are in terms of individual stats, but what the numbers are on the scoreboard each and every week?
Yeah, we of course stress it all the time. We tell them, guys, if we have a really good team, we're gonna win some awards. And if we don't have a good team, but you have great stats, well, you're not going to get the awards anyway, because that's just the way it works. Of course, receivers, they always want more passes. You see that in college, you see it in the pros. But we don't throw that many. We've had some kids that have been very good receivers. Had a guy graduated last year that was a very good receiver, but if we have a really good receiver, well, then teams tend to double team him. Well, then, of course, we probably throw to the guy that's single covered, and that's just kind of the way it works. But my own kids, I've had my own sons have been very good offensive players, and they'd get irritated with me if they only got 5 carries a game, and that happened at times. And so it's been going on for years. Yeah, we've had guys that have been college players, they probably carried the ball 100 times in their senior year, but gained over 1,000 yards. And of course, if you'd given them to them 200 times, they'd have had 2,000 yards. But we say, no, then you're not going to be as good on defense. It's going to harm your defense. You're going to get tired. So once again, the defensive emphasis has always been there.
Another of your two-way players is your quarterback, Tucker. That's always hard, I would think, where your quarterback, where you're, instead of coming off the field and being able to talk to you and your coaches, is right back playing defense and doing a great job on the defensive side. Could you talk about the job that he has done as a senior? Again, a guy you mentioned a little bit earlier, a big play where he just did the right thing. How big is Tucker in terms of the success you've had this year at the quarterback position?
Yeah, he probably understands football as good as anybody we've ever had. My youngest son, Justin, of course, was a heck of a football mind, too, and ended up playing, of course, in college and then coaching in college and so on. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, Tucker, he has everything down about the opponent and every position, too. He notices little things like if a defensive end takes this type of stance, or if he moves out a foot or two more, then this is going to happen, and so on and so on. And he's got this year to where he goes up to the line. I think he holds our guys too long sometimes. And I'll tell him, snap the ball, call the cadence. And he will, Coach, I'm looking them over to see what they're going to do. Oh, yeah, he'll stand there and look at the defense. And, of course, he'll say, probably a down in a set. And, of course, the kids are all waiting for the hut. And he'll sometimes hold it 10, 12 seconds and of course snap it at what he thinks is just the right time when a guy just moved out of a hole or something, you see, and so he's very, very heady about that. Defensively, of course, he studies the other team's offense thoroughly and pretty much always knows what's happening, and then tries to help his teammates by getting them to move to the correct position. So his knowledge of the game has really helped us a lot in key situations this year.
Again, we're talking to Jerry Sinz, the Edgar head football coach here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. Well, let's talk about this championship game coming up on Thursday afternoon. Darlington, of course, I mean, really, really, you don't get this far without being really, really good, so I feel silly even saying it, but in looking at what they've been able to accomplish this season, it's incredibly impressive, and it looks like as big a test as you guys have had, and you had some pretty big tests so far.
Yeah, they actually appear physically to be pretty similar to Mondovi. Mondovi had a very, very good two-way player at quarterback. Ran the ball, passed the ball really well, and played safety and defense. Well, Darlington's got the same situation. Their guy's not quite as big, but he looks like maybe he's a little shiftier, possibly a little faster. Has just about the same stats. They have a couple good running backs, just like Mondovi did. They have some big, strong, quick, aggressive linemen. Good receivers. They don't have a receiver that has as many receptions as the one guy from Mondovi did, but they have about three guys that have, 20 to 25 receptions and 300-400 yards and, like 6-7 touchdowns apiece. So they got a lot of weapons. They've been playing better defense the last couple of weeks than they did sometimes early in the year, but who knows? Maybe they were just depending on their offense and didn't really care that much. But now, of course, they're focusing more on defense too. So certainly they're going to be a big challenge.
Is this one of those games, as you said earlier, where you tell the guys, hey, if they don't have the football, they can't score, and having the football a lot will be a big key. Moving those sticks and being perhaps methodical offensively will be a big key for your team?
Yeah, I think so. And, of course, turnovers will be huge. Penalties will be huge. A year ago when we won it, we didn't hardly have any penalties, and I was just amazed at it. I couldn't believe that it just kept continuing. We'd go week after week after week. We'd have 1, 2, once in a while we might have 3 penalties for 20 yards, and we went the whole season last year like that. Now this year we've been getting a few more, and of course, like I said earlier, we've been getting them in crucial situations, especially in the playoffs. And of course, that's been hurting us some, but hopefully, Thursday we won't. And if we're lucky, maybe Darlington will get a couple key penalties like we've been getting lately. And of course, that'll help us out then. But I think penalties and turnovers and kicking game too is always a huge key in big games.
Do you think, you said it last year being so disciplined and not making those kind of mistakes, and that helps you win these kind of games. Do you feel as though that having that experience of, you said it, these guys have been there, they've been playing on that surface, they've been playing in that situation, will experience be a factor in the game on Thursday?
Well, I hope so, since we have more of it. But I'm not going to bank on it. But yeah, a guy would hope that it might. They were down there in, I think, 2022. I think they played Stratford, or might even been 2023. And that was a really close game too. I think it was a 10-7 game that was decided on a field goal.
Yeah, you're exactly right. 2023.
Yeah, so they've
not too long.
Yeah. So they've been down there. We actually played them at state one time. We also played them in the state semifinals. I think in 2014, and they beat us 21-20 when we went for a 2-point conversion when we scored late on them in the fourth quarter. We didn't get it, so they went and we went home. So
would winning a Division 6 state championship in addition to the 2 D7s you've had the last couple of years add a little icing on the cake for this group? Because I'm not going to ask you whether you like it or not, or whether or not it matters, because the rules are the rules, and all your success made you move up a division because of all the success, the old success quotient. Was that something that was thought, hey, they're putting us up a division because they don't want us to win again? Well, we're going to win again anyways. Is there any kind of mindset along those lines?
No, I don't think so. We have played in the past. Of course, we were bigger then,
right,
enrollment-wise too. But yeah, in 98, 99, 2000, and 2001, we were there. We were in Division 5 all 4 of those years. Well, then in 2008, 9, and 10, we went 3 years in a row, and we were Division 6 those 3 years. We stayed in Division 6 until 2016 was the first year that we went to Division 7. And so we've been there. And once again, I don't think it would be any easier to win Division 7 this year when I look at the 2 teams that are in it.
True.
I mean, Kenosha St. Joe's, yeah. we know about them. We played them 1 year in state, too. And Cochran Fountain City beat Boyceville, who we just nipped by 1 point last year, and then Boyceville had all their key players back. So I'm thinking, well, geez, if those guys are good enough to beat Boyceville, they're damn good. And so no, I think once you get to the state level, just about every team is really good and has really skilled players,
and I guess
really motivated.
And I guess finally, number one, best of luck on Thursday. But also, we always like to ask about where the whole state of the program is. And it almost sounds a little silly with all the success that you've had, not just in recent years, but for so long. But right now, at the youth level and at, the right up through the varsity level, is the entire Edgar program still very solid in terms of numbers? And does the future still look like, hey, kids and their families love to play football in Edgar?
Yeah, I think so. Of course, we're losing numbers some every year. The guys we having a hard time maintaining are the big guys. I mentioned before, we don't have many big guys. We graduated 4 big guys last year, 4 seniors, and we had nobody to really replace them size-wise. We have some big guys in our school, but they're just not playing right now. They're either hunters or fishermen, or they're like working on their cars or whatever. But so that's been somewhat of an issue. This is the fewest guys we've ever had on a state team ever. You had a roster of about 40. But, years ago we used to easily have, 50, 55. So that's part of it. Our JVs, I think, had 1 loss this year. And I believe our 7th and 8th grade team had 1 loss, probably both close games. So, yeah, and we finally got some big guys in the 8th grade. I saw some in the hall today, and I said, we should be suiting you guys up. One kid is about 6'1.5", about 220. Well, he'd be one of our biggest guys in the high school team. He's an 8th grader. So we're going to get some size back.
Very, very good. Well, again, Coach, it's been I tell you, you've kept everybody on the edge of the seat during this playoff run. I mean, you had some really incredible games. It's been really something to watch, and I know it's a great challenge on Thursday, but best of luck to you and your team and your coaches and the entire Edgar football community, and really do appreciate you. For people out there, we're doing this at 8 o'clock on Tuesday night. He's such a busy guy. I think he had a family birthday party, and yet we're able to get a little time with us, and we really do appreciate it. So good luck on Thursday, and good luck as you continue with the Edgar football team.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chad. We really appreciate the support.
Jerry Sinz, the head football coach of Edgar High School, our coach guest this week on the Big High School Sports Show. One thing's right at the very end. When I was asking about the state of the program, we like to see what the long-term look is. Even in Edgar, there's that struggle to get guys to come out. That kind of jumped out at me because the one place I thought, well, they all must be playing football is Edgar, and even Coach Sinz has to sometimes in this era fight to get some of these kids to come out, the big kids to come out.
Right, and not only are you fighting to get kids, every school probably for the most part, regardless of demographic and that sort of thing, he hit the reasons, and every school deals with this. The kids who are into hunting, the kids who are into having jobs, the kids who have cars and want to spend their time. From school to school, that is the same thing. And and it is, as a head coach, it is kind of maddening when you look at your line and it's a little bit undersized, but then you walk the hallways all day long and see these massive kids walking around who don't, and you work really hard to get them out there. I can only imagine in a school the size of Edgar and where football reigns so supreme, how hard it must be for those kids to dodge those questions from Coach Sinz about why they're not out there on that football field.
Absolutely. So again, the Edgar Wildcats getting set to take on Darlington tomorrow. The second game, they
so used to being number one, yeah.
What about that game? I mean, one thing we're going to talk a little bit later about these 7 championship games coming up, but one thing that jumps out. Boy, there are a lot of 13-0 teams.
There's a lot of 13-0 teams, and there seems to be a little bit fewer of the private schools this year. There's kind of the two.
What are people going to complain about?
Well, they will find something. I will guarantee you that. And I am kind of waiting for the dust to completely settle and hear the final verdict on the new playoff system and how it worked out this year and what people thought of it overall and what, if any, tweaks they'll make to it for year 2.
And one of the things was to try to have, I think, the best teams play at the end, right?
Yep, and looking like we got that way. And I do think, too, I think there was a lot of grumbling about this early with the whole demographic thing, right? Like teams with the 3-hour trips in level 1, but ultimately I think that some of those may have resulted in exactly what they were hoping for. So, and I think it is kind of interesting and exciting throughout the course of the year to see exactly where you are with those point totals. Like, not only is this where I am, but this is who we'd match up against as of today. So I think there's definitely some positives.
So Edgar and Darlington will play at about 1 o'clock tomorrow at Camp Randall Stadium. Again, coming up in the second hour, we'll touch on these 7 games to keep an eye on Thursday and Friday. We'll touch a little bit on the start of the girls' basketball season and even maybe touch a little bit on the start of hockey season, which gets underway. Next week, we will turn the page and go to our winter high school sports focus here on the Big High School Sports Show. And BJ Brandt will be with me. And actually, our coach guest next week will be Jeff Gress, who is the guy who is my co-host until the last number of years. I mean, I think it's like 7 years, but now he's back, head basketball coach again at Newman Catholic. He'll be our coach guest. We'll have a student-athlete guest as well. So I hope you pop into BJ's office and give him the keys to doing this well and how to keep me happy.
I will pass the torch to him, and Coach Gress can also pass the torch to him in person next Wednesday.
So we'll look forward to that. But coming up next, we have the top of the hour news update. We'll get news, weather, and sports information update at the top of every hour right here on 98.9 WXCO. But then after that, we will have our student-athlete guest for this week from Wausau East, Evelyn Tomey. She was a second-team all-conference performer during the fall in high school volleyball, and now she is one of the leaders for the Wausau East girls basketball team that has already started their season. And again, with football and then the start of winter sports kind of overlapping as it tends to do, and it's a good problem to have for some of these schools, right?
Yeah, it is, and also I think a lot of times I would imagine communities like Edgar probably tell these kids, as basketball's been going on for a full week already, when you get back on Monday, maybe take a day or two and let your body heal before you jump right into it.
Absolutely. So again, we will have Evelyn Tomey from Wausau East coming up at 7:06. Second hour of the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. And welcome back. It is hour number 2 of the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. Online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. And again, you can also catch the show on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and the 98.9 WXCO channel. And of course, if you've missed any of the programs, you can go back, watch on YouTube. It's put up as a podcast right after the show on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts by searching Big High School Sports Show. And also, you can go to our website, WXCO.FM or civicmedia.us, and get the podcast episodes as well. And, of course, follow me on social media. We'll give you a link. So there's no excuse for not finding the show somewhere.
I would agree.
Jason Foster across the way. I am Chad Holmes, and we're very happy to welcome in our student-athlete guest for this week from Wausau East High School, Evelyn Tomey. And Evelyn, thank you for coming on by.
Thank you for having me.
Multi-sport athlete. I know you just got off a volleyball season. You just played last night in high school girls basketball. Real quick, do you have a spring sport as well?
Yes, softball.
So 3-sport athlete. We always love that. So a lot to talk about with you. I guess I'll start off with volleyball this year because you've completed your senior season as a volleyball player. You were second team all-conference in the Wisconsin Valley this year. A middle hitter. Could you talk maybe a little bit about your volleyball season? What were some of the highlights for your season?
Yeah, so I think we had a new coach, which that was very cool. I think he did a great job. Definitely a learning experience, but that was great. For my senior year, I think it was really cool. Just everyone, we have such a community when it comes to volleyball, and I feel like we have a family, and a great way to end, I guess, my volleyball career. But yeah, it was a good season.
Kind of following up that question too, and I know who your new head coach was because he teaches at Wausau West. Great guy. I like Coach Peterson a lot. How is it like being a 3-sport athlete and being coached by 3 different people? Do you find, because very different styles, right, from season to season, and Coach Steinke's your and I know Coach Steinke well, and he's an excitable guy. So talk about that a little bit. What it's like to play for different coaches and different styles of coaching.
I think it's definitely I know all of them really well, so it's not too difficult to transition each season, but it's definitely, I feel like there's different aspects that I look forward to for seasons, and just what each coach can bring, I think is definitely something I look forward to. But they're all great coaches, and I love all of them. They do a really good job.
That's great.
Middle hitter. Could you talk a little bit about the positions? Because I think a lot of people I think maybe with basketball, you think, we have guards and forwards and center for a volleyball player. And one of the things, and I'm going to admit it, I've done a little bit of volleyball broadcasting because you do have the rotation, but yet you still are considered a certain position. When you are out on the court and the rotation happens, how do you get to where you want to be the most successful? And maybe explain what a middle hitter is and maybe your role on the court.
Yeah, so it's definitely... I would say it's hard because you're blocking everything, so you have to be quick. You have to make sure your timing is good. But I would say it is definitely an exciting position because you can run so many different plays, and you can run quicks and stuff like that, back hits. But I think it's definitely an important role in just making sure. A big thing is being on time and knowing where you're supposed to be, because again, you're blocking everything. So you have to know your timing, footwork, very big thing that I have had to realize. You have to do your footwork if you want to be in the correct spot.
So as a former head coach and as a former athletic director, I have a lot of admiration for 3-sport athletes. I think that's awesome. And I don't think in this day and age people quite understand how involved high school athletics is, what you have to do year-round in each sport. Can you talk a little bit about what this past summer was like for you as a 3-sport athlete? What does the typical day or week looks like, knowing that you're truly preparing to play 3 sports in your senior year?
Yeah, so we always lift for volleyball. So that was, I also work, so I was trying to get to everything I could, but in a typical week, we lift about 3 times a week. And then Mondays, I have volleyball. And then obviously Tuesdays is basketball, summer league, and like every day I feel like I was always doing sports, which is very exciting. I was always busy this summer. Obviously open gyms, stuff like that, making sure that I'm getting to everything I can and just really like spreading my time out equally.
How do you balance it? I mean, in terms of not just being at each of the events that you need to be at and doing the work that you need to do, but also staying mentally sharp, because I think you don't want to get wore out by it. You don't want to lose your love for each of these sports. Do you have any way that you go about trying to balance off making sure that you're doing as well as you can in each of these sports, being able to, as you say, work as well, and just basically being a kid and being around your friends and having fun? Have you learned anything in terms of time management skills that you could share?
Definitely. I feel like, well, like you said, time management is a huge thing, in making sure that when I'm in sports, I feel like I really focus on the sport I'm in. So, yes, I was in volleyball, and there was a lot of open gyms for basketball that like I couldn't attend. I was obviously still talking to my basketball coach about it, but just really focusing on the sport I'm in, and because each sport, I mean, I'm staying in shape. So yes, I'm not going to the open gyms for basketball, but I'm in volleyball, so I'm staying in shape. And I think just really managing my time, especially with school, you have to manage it well.
So with school and the sports, and you had this summer you had a job, when you do have a little bit of free time, what do you like to do?
I love hanging out with my friends. I also really like baking, being outside.
What's your favorite thing to bake?
I would say cookies. I love baking cookies. It's just enough like baking, it's not a whole day ordeal,
Yep.
Yeah.
What's your favorite class in school?
I would say definitely yearbook. It's very fun. I think creating something that everyone gets excited about is very cool, and I love the teacher, so it's really fun.
We've talked about being in 3 sports, and you talk about teammates or friends. Talk about your teammates. Like what role is doing this with your friends, and like and name some names. Like who are the people who make it most enjoyable, and who also played a role in the successes that you've had and will have moving forward through the winter and the spring? Yeah,
I think for volleyball, again, like I talked about before, it's such a like tight-knit community with us, and I mean, our captains, Natalie and Gretchen, were great. They knew how to kind of get the opinions of everyone and make sure that everyone was being heard and stuff. I think also we had talked about during the season, like, more quiet leaders and how that is a very big part. And so Carly, she was, I think, one of those where she wasn't always, like, willing to give her opinion, but she was such a good leader, and she was always doing what she was supposed to. When it comes to basketball, I think that, again, a lot of the people on my team, they're new and they're freshmen, but I would say Elena Bacon, she is such a good leader. She's a hard hustler. She always has such a good attitude, and people like that, I think, just really bring the team together, and I would say kind of make our team what it is.
We were talking in the lobby before we came on the air, and you were talking about the youth on your basketball team. Hey, you as a senior, how are you as a leader? What do you think your strengths are in terms of being a leader for this young group that you're working with here in the winter?
I would say my attitude. I think I have a really good attitude, and just making sure that also everyone is heard, and knowing that, like, it's always, like, positive attitudes are such a good thing, and that's something that I feel like I as a person stress and make sure that our team is having a good attitude no matter what, like, scenario we're in, or just even, like, last year, I think our attitude had to be good. Everyone had to have such a good attitude. So I think I bring, like, just a positive attitude.
Let me continue here because, again, I think one of the great things about high school athletics is the life lessons that you learn. And you can learn life lessons by being part of a championship team, but also being part of a team where you're trying to build something. And you mentioned last year, and it was a struggle because numbers-wise for the Lumberjacks, you didn't have a lot of players, and you had to go through a Wisconsin Valley Conference that has a lot of big schools, so obviously it's always difficult. How do you look at the challenges of trying to build a better program for Wausau East than what you saw when you came, and hopefully try to leave it in a better place? Could you talk a little bit about how you handle maybe where you have a tough couple of weeks or a tough season even to keep that positive attitude? How have you been able to do that?
I think just working hard, always making sure I'm working hard, and like even if a game's not going well or a season or like you said a couple of weeks is not going well, just making sure that you are still giving it your all, because if you're giving it your all, then I mean you can't really get down on yourself because you gave what you could. And that's something that I think I've definitely learned is you only get really a certain amount of time, so you might as well give it your all when you're on the court.
Talking about high school and your favorite class, what is your plan after high school? What is it that you're looking forward to doing after you graduate?
Yeah, so I'm planning on going to college. I'm going to go to Eau Claire, and I want to go for chiropractor. I would like to work with athletes eventually, so that's kind of my goal.
As somebody who went to UW Eau Claire, who really, I love that school. It really is a place that I do remember fondly for my time there. Why Eau Claire? What is it about Eau Claire and the University of Wisconsin at Eau Claire that made you say I want to spend a few years of my life there?
Well, freshman year I think I went to a volleyball camp, and the campus is beautiful.
Yes,
it's so amazing. I've had also many family members that have gone who they love it, and I think just, again, they've talked about community and how amazing it was in their time, and I think that definitely convinced me to go, and yeah, I'm very excited.
I think that we spend a lot of time on this show, and it's not, I don't know, it's probably not 50-50, but I'm not sure what the numbers would be either way, but we always talk about our student athletes about continuing to play sports after high school, and you had said before you came on the air that you had made the decision not to do that, and I love that decision because college sports is whatever. Think about however hard you work in high school, and it's like times 10, right? It's so much, and it's so much different too, right? It's not about necessarily being with your friends. It's a lot like a job. So, what went into you making that decision, and I guess kind of why did you make that decision, and what are you excited to do in addition to not playing sports at the next level?
Yeah, well, in high school, I've always played 3 sports, and then I've also done club volleyball. And I think after this year, I'm ready to kind of move on. I'll always miss sports. I love playing sports. I love being active, but I'm also ready to, kind of start something new, get into my career. I would love to join like clubs at Eau Claire. I think they have a pickleball one, which I'm very excited about. But yeah, so just doing stuff like that to stay active, for sure I'll continue. But yeah, I think for me, sports, I'll always love them, but I feel like I didn't feel the need to continue in college.
Again, we're talking to Evelyn Tomey from Wausau East Senior here on the Big High School Sports Show. So that means maybe a little bit more importance being put on your final year at Wausau East and playing varsity basketball and varsity softball. What are your goals for the rest of this senior season? Because I think there has to be a different mentality, knowing that while you will be playing and you'll be athletic and you'll be having fun, but it's not the same as when you get under those lights at a varsity basketball game and have your friends and your family and your community out there. What are you looking to achieve here in the winter and the spring?
I think just kind of just taking everything in, and again, like working hard. Like this is my last season, so just always working hard, making sure I'm putting everything I have on the court, leaving it on the court. Also, just kind of, I guess, embracing the family that is built with sports. Obviously, next year that won't be really a big part of my life. So kind of just, again, taking that in and enjoying it while it lasts.
Going into your final year, your fourth year of competing in three sports in the Wisconsin Valley Conference, who's your favorite rivalry? Who's your favorite team to play? Who's your least favorite team to play? Talk about that a little bit.
Or even if it's different for different sports, it could be that way as well.
I would say West is my favorite. I think for sure for volleyball, because we have the pink game, and that's just, it's so fun. I think also the student sections that are, I mean, sometimes they can, for rivalry, it's kind of can be a little annoying, but I think it's really cool to see both sides, I guess, of the river come together and support their teams. I know we were talking about this earlier, but I think definitely Marshfield, their lights really, I don't know, it's hard, especially for volleyball. Sometimes you lose the ball and stuff, but yeah.
How important is the energy at your whatever event? One thing I've always noticed about volleyball, there's always a certain different energy in the gym than there is during basketball. The way that the girls respond after getting a point, or the way that the crowd responds. What is that energy like? And also, do you feel that energy at whatever event you're involved? How important is the crowd? How important is it to have your student friends out there and being part of the whole environment?
Yeah, I think it's very important. It's definitely, again, you have the other side saying chants at you, but just to know that you have a huge student section behind you, backing you up and cheering you on, just it's a different type of like feeling to know that there's people supporting you and cheering you on in a game.
Yeah, just following up on that a little bit, and you brought it up, and the light bulb kind of went on in my head a little bit. When I think about high school athletics and I think about the East-West rivalry and all the great things, I think about the log games that we stopped playing a couple of years ago and how great those were. And then I think about some of the big rivalry boys basketball games and that, but literally, or your own homecoming game. It's usually not East or West, but those are usually some of the best crowds of the year for football. The pink game really has become one of the premier high school sporting events in our community. When you talk about attendance, when you talk about crowd involvement, can you talk a little bit more? Like you said, you really look forward to that, and that's great. Talk a little bit more about the pink game and how it kind of brings the two sides together, but also kind of competes, and what leads into that game. It's not just you show up that night and play. There's a lot more to it, right?
Yeah, I would say we start preparing for that like first day of the season. It's a lot goes into it. It's definitely nerve-wracking the first, I would say, couple points of the game. This was my, I guess, third year being on varsity, and I was very nervous. But after a little bit, when you hear, again, the like crowds cheering, and just you kind of realize that, I mean, there's a bigger cause for this game. And so, I mean, you want to win, but whatever happens, you're fighting for a good cause. And so that definitely helps the nerves go down.
I always love, one of my favorite parts of the game is, and it happens long before the game, is when the posters come out and that you guys do those posters together. Like, are there, and I know it's a rivalry and that's what makes high school sports great, but do you also have friendships across the river and people that you get along with and play with and look forward to competing against?
Yes. When we were taking the pictures for this year, it was, I mean, I feel like you wouldn't have guessed that we're rivals and we are going up against each other. The West girls are so sweet. They're very nice. And so, definitely very sweet and good, I guess, a good group of girls to call rivals because,
Can you talk a little bit about your family, siblings? How many siblings do you have?
Yeah, I have two siblings. I have a brother and a sister. They're both older than me.
Were they both involved in athletics?
Yes. My brother, he played football, basketball, and baseball. And then my sister, she played volleyball and softball.
Was it an aid to you to have siblings that have gone through what you've gone through?
Oh, for sure. I definitely growing up, I always looked up to my siblings, and them just playing. My sister, I always, like, whenever I would see her on the volleyball court, I knew, like, that's who I wanted to be. So always looking up to her. And then obviously my brother playing basketball, he definitely looked up to him, and just, yeah, they are definitely people who I can thank for getting involved with sports.
So kind of switching back to basketball a little bit, we talked a little bit before you came on about kind of the struggles last year in the program. The biggest thing was kind of numbers, right? Like you struggled to have enough for multiple teams, and it sounds like you guys have good numbers this year, and it sounds like you have some really young talent. What are you most looking forward to this year, and what are some of the goals for the season?
I think I'm really looking forward to just all of us being able to work together. I was telling you earlier, but 3 out of the 5 starters are freshmen, and then we have a foreign exchange student also who's a starter. So I've never played with any of them. And so I think I'm really excited to just learn how they play, and just how we can come together and ultimately, create a great team. And I think all of even the girls who aren't starters, they are great, and I'm very excited to start, like, learning how they play and stuff.
Where's your foreign exchange student from?
Spain.
Spain.
Yes.
What position do you play in softball?
Softball, I'm first baseman.
And and again, this is a question that you just have to pretend nobody's listening. But what's your favorite sport?
I think all of them. I would say basketball, but I think 'cause they're all great for different reasons, and I love each of them, like, for different reasons. They teach me different things, and they're not the same. So
Well, let me ask then about basketball specifically. What is it about basketball? Because there's nothing wrong with saying, "Oh boy, this is the one that this connects with me for whatever reason." What is the maybe that gets to you about basketball, the things that you love about basketball that make you look forward to going to practice and looking forward to going to the games and everything else?
I think just fast pace. It's very fast paced. I mean, you stay in great shape, I guess. That's always a plus. But I think, it's very fast paced, and I think you're always moving, always having to make sure you're ready, or there's different plays, which I guess volleyball has different plays too, but I just think it's different when it comes to basketball.
So as both a head coach and an athletic director, my hope for our goal was always to win, right? Because you put so much time and effort into it. Of course you want to work hard and win. But my hope and my purpose, our hope and our purpose always was that when you're all done, whether it's your senior season in each sport or when you walk across the stage at graduation, is being able to look back over your shoulder and say, I'm a better human being today than I was when I started. What life skills and life lessons have athletics taught you that you'll take with you into life after high school?
I think definitely, or I would say just how to, like, persevere and just keep going. I think especially when it comes to basketball, that's been a huge lesson that I've learned, and how in the moment you might not always want to, but it's just so good to keep going, and it might be hard, but you can do hard things. I think also, again, it's taught me to just play my hardest and give everything all that I have, because you only have a certain kind of time frame of each sport. So
Anything else before the final question?
No, just congratulations on a great high school career. I know you got 2 seasons left, so the best of luck this winter and in the spring, and go get them.
Thank you.
And our final question is we always like it when it's a multi-sport athlete and a senior who's gone through a lot, because when you count all the seasons, you've had a lot of seasons. Yeah. But based on what you've learned now in your senior year, and you said it, I think this is probably the perfect question because you have 3 freshman starters on your basketball team. For a freshman starting their journey at Wausau East, what piece of advice would you give them to be thinking about now in order to get the most out of their years at East?
I think I feel like I've touched on it a lot, but definitely just putting your all, giving your all, because when it comes to basketball, you have 2 hours of practice and a certain amount of game time. So just giving it your all, always, or not giving up, and really making sure that when you're on the court or when you're given chances to play, use it, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to mess up. You might have a game that's not the best, but you can always come back from it, and everyone makes mistakes, so it's okay.
That is wonderful advice.
Agreed.
Evelyn Tomey, Wausau East Lumberjack Senior, thank you again for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to take a time out and come back with more Big High School Sports Show, 98.9 WXCO.
We are the NFHS. That stands for the National Federation of State High School Associations. But really, what we stand for, together with the WIAA, are the 178,000 high school sports students in Wisconsin. And so we stand. We stand for the runners, soccer and basketball players. We stand for their coaches, administrators, and officials. We stand for the swimmers, football players, and wrestlers. We stand for the golfers, softball, and volleyball players. We stand as the national leader and advocate for high school athletics and all who participate in them and make them possible. Because it is our purpose to ensure that high school students get to play, perform, and compete together. To learn more about who we are and what we stand for, visit nfhs.org.
So, how are the kids?
Well, Emily made the honor roll.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah, we're really proud of her. Tyler, on the other hand, though.
What's going on?
He's been moody lately, just feeling down and not like himself.
Oh, we've been there. Nick was struggling last spring. He was so anxious and stressed.
Really? What helped?
Well, he joined the soccer team. And ever since, he's been a lot happier. He has more energy, he's less stressed, and he's definitely in a better mood at home. It's made a huge difference.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad he's getting out of the house, he's getting some exercise, and he's off his phone for once. It's been good for his mental health.
Sounds like it's been good for your mental health, too.
Participating in Wisconsin high school sports improves students' physical and mental health. Encourage your son or daughter to get involved. This message presented by the WIAA and the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association.
And welcome back. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app, YouTube.com, 98.9 WXCO channel as well. With Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes. She was terrific.
She sure was.
I mean,
yeah.
I got to say, they're always terrific, but I thought she handled herself as well as anybody because, I mean, she really, you could see, I think, the thought process. And that last answer, we haven't heard that often.
Right.
Because I think that's one thing I think about a lot is a mistake is not a mistake unless you don't learn something from it. And if you don't make mistakes, you're not going to learn anything. And I just think that being willing to put yourself out there and do that, I was very impressed. So again, it's, good final interview for your season.
I would agree. The other thing I wanted to touch on, what she talked about, I think is so important for her peers, not her Wausau East peers, for all peers, males, females, whatever school you go to, whatever sports you play. She said I thought a lot of really good things about, leadership. And it gets lost a little bit in high school because I think we've replaced the word leadership with captains. And being a captain is such a tough process. Like, I think for a lot of people, it's just that in some sports, it's that C you put on your jersey, or being able to go out for the coin toss, and people just want that accolade or that award and believe that that's what it is. But at the end of the day, truly being a good leader is a skill, just like blocking, tackling, shooting a jump shot, playing really good defense. And not everybody can be a leader, and not everybody can or should be a captain. And it's really hard. It's a really hard thing for coaches to do. And there's a million different processes for getting to that point. And I'll speak for myself personally. In over 20 years of doing it, I'm not sure I ever got it completely right. So it is a challenge. But I think it's really important what you said too, is to know that not everybody can or should or needs to be a leader. Some people need to lead. But in order for there to be success on a team, other people need to follow those leaders, and other people, it's just understanding what your role is, what you're comfortable is, and doing, and being the absolute best you can be in that role. And I think she said a lot of really nice things about that, and I give her a lot of credit. And I think ultimately, I think she is a really nice leader.
And also, one thing I'll say is what constitutes success is not just the wins and losses.
Oh, absolutely.
And I just think that the way she talked, and let's put it out there. I mean, East last year in basketball struggled. And boy, you learned so much, not just in the winning, but in how you handle the tough times. In volleyball, they were 2-8 in the Valley this year. Again, I just have so much respect for those that still are able to battle and to learn and to, as you said, lead. I just... Again, high school athletics teaches so many of those lessons, and I got the sense that young lady learned a lot of great lessons from high school athletics.
And she gets it. I mean, we're about to talk about 7 state championship games that involve 14 teams. By 7 o'clock on Friday night, there will be 7 state champions. A month after that, most people won't even remember who the 7 state champions are, let alone who they beat to get there, who the 14 teams were. Certainly won't remember who made it to level 4 and got there. So at the end of the day, everyone works hard and wants to win, and that's a great skill and trait, and you should be doing that. But ultimately, it really comes down to what you learn along the way. And 2-8 seasons, 1-7 seasons, whatever the case, there's probably a lot more to be learned in those seasons than there are in the 13 and 14-0 seasons. And I think that if you're willing to have an open mind, both as an athlete and as a coach, there's a lot of wins within a game, whether it's the actual victory or defeat at the end of the game. There's a lot of areas for winning and learning throughout the course of a game and a season.
Let's talk about these championship games coming up starting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Cochrane Fountain City against Kenosha St. Joseph, both 13-0. That's D7. Also tomorrow, Edgar, 13-0 against Darlington, 13-0 in D6 at 1 o'clock. Mayville against Northwestern. Hey, 13-0 versus 13-0 in Division 5. And then finally, tomorrow, there is one combined loss in the 4 games.
Unbelievable.
Little Chute 12-1, Winneconne 13-0. Let's talk about those 4 games because that is unbelievable.
It really is.
I mean, it really is. It's like, what I wanted to add, and I actually thought about this over the weekend, was because when we get to the state basketball tournament, you'll see once in a while a team that loses 8, 9, 10 games make it to the tournament, and most of the time they'll lose a handful of games. I mean, very rarely you'll see they find their way. There seems to be maybe more, I would call them upsets to get to the basketball tournament. What does it say about football that all these great teams, and the thing about it is teams that they beat last week were just as good in most cases, but it does seem as though the cream, and maybe goes back to what you said earlier about the way the system is set up, that the cream has risen to the top.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what we're seeing in these teams is truly elite level football. Like, I don't think people quite understand, especially now at the high school level. We talk about NFL and Division I or even just college football, but how much goes into and how hard it is to win a game. Like not to be 1-9 for the year, but to win each week. What goes into that? The amount of film watching, the amount of practice, the amount of strength and conditioning to ensure that you're healthy enough to get to that point. And then with all that said and done, you need the ball to bounce your way a couple times. You might need a call or two in a game to win. When you talk to Coach Sinz and how close these play, the difference between winning and losing those games is it's one possession. Sometimes it's all the way down to one play. So to get to 13-0 is a pretty amazing and elite accomplishment. And it kind of speaks to a little bit then, if you are a 4, 5, 2, 3 win team, the gap between where you are and where you need to go. So we talk a lot during the season. Merrill, for whatever reason, just jumped into my head right now. It's the steps each year that you take where you can really look at big improvement, even by just winning a game, making the playoffs versus not making them, getting a home game, winning a home game. Like, there are all those tiers that these teams took to get to the point that they're at now, and you don't go from being 1-8 to 13-0. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. And you talk about, I think part of it's the number of games, right? There's 9 regular season games. That's the only high school sport that's like that has that few. 500 teams might make the playoffs, make a run. 162 games in a baseball season. There are teams with not great records. The wild card teams can make big runs. In the NFL, I think it comes down to who's playing the best football at the end of the year. In high school football, you don't make it to the end of the year unless you're really playing elite football all 14 weeks. And I think that's what we're seeing with these matchups.
Any of those 4 games jump out to you? Because I have to admit, we followed Edgar. We talk about them a lot. A lot of the other schools are not in our area. You've been around the high school game for such a long time. Any of those games really jump out to you?
Well, I think some of the names do, right? I think there's some historical teams here who maybe haven't had as much recent success, but Northwestern has a really strong football program, hasn't really broke through at this level. So I'm interested to watch that. Little Chute plays really good football and has had a really solid team, but has not gotten to this level. I think I told you earlier that when I was at Northland Pines, they, not under my tenure, but they made it to a state championship one time and lost to Darlington. So, I mean, there's a little bit there. And I know Kenosha St. Joe's, I don't know much about Cochrane Fountain City other than where it is. But I think we are seeing some different names here. So that, I mean, Edgar's probably the one that people are like, oh, big shock, Edgar's back in a state championship game. But in the other 3, I mean, those are teams who are going to kind of break through this year and win a state championship.
Yeah, and Friday, D3, Grafton against Reedsburg, 13-0 against 10-3. Oh, 3-loss team.
Yeah,
that's the only one.
Slackers.
Another matchup of unbeatens in Division 2, West Up here and Notre Dame Academy, both 13-0. And then Division 1, Arrowhead with their great football tradition, 12-1, and Bayport looking to make it back-to-back as Bayport 11-2.
I think Bayport is that team, right? Like when we had way more familiarity with the Fox Valley Association and that Fox River Classic that they're in over there, Bayport kind of seemed like that next team, like the one that was breaking through and trying to be Kimberly at the time when they were in their 6 or 7 run. And I think they really have. I think with winning it last year, being there a year or 2 before that, and being back this year, I think they've put themselves there. Arrowhead is maybe a little bit like the Edgar and Stratford, right? They have that super rich tradition, but have not been sitting in this chair for a minute. I mean, they have the titles.
Let me ask you, are you surprised? Because we saw them in level 1, because Wausau West went down there, and they were very impressive, but at the same time, I know they were a little banged up.
Yep.
They had a game where they were down 21 points the very next week. Who was that against? It wasn't Hamilton, was it?
It was Brookfield East, who beat Everest the week before.
There you go. I mean, I frankly, I'm a little surprised they made it, but again, it just shows, I think certain teams, I give credit to the coaches and the players as well, find ways.
Yeah.
They have found ways.
Programs find ways, right? And going against a 2-loss Bayport team. I mean, I think that's probably the most intriguing match.
Of course, and they had the Bayport last week at a 38-35 win against Muskego. I mean, Muskego obviously is outstanding.
Powerhouse, absolutely. I think the one matchup here that is teams that have always been good and continue to be really good is the West De Pere Notre Dame game. I think those are the historic powerhouses in that D2, D3 and kind of get bumped up. I think that should be an outstanding matchup. 2 undefeated teams with a lot of tradition and history.
And West De Pere beat Bayport this year in a crazy game that Bayport probably should have won, but West De Pere found a way. So again, when you see this many 13-0 versus 13-0 games, it looks to be like it should be a fun couple of days.
Right, absolutely, yeah. Some powerhouses and some really good football and some pretty good weather to play it in. I mean, it looks like it's going to be 2 nice days.
Even last week, again, it was very nice. I mean, we have not had to deal with terrible weather at all coming down the stretch like we often have to this time of year. Let's touch a little bit on the winter sports. We're not going to have you here talking about it for the rest, but we may as well let you. I actually want to start with girls hockey because I know that you've been following girls hockey for a long time. Because family.
Yep.
You would, not as a coach, but as a father, able to watch it and watch the Central Wisconsin Storm. Coming up next Tuesday, the Storm will open up their season, taking on the Lake Shore Lightning. We'll have the game for you next Tuesday right here on 98.9 WXCO. I wanted to ask you about them being back in a conference because, again, those years that you were traveling all over with Trinity and the Storm, it was as an independent.
Yep.
And basically, over these last number of years, there was so much success with the Storm. Again, they were in the state championship game last year. But it always felt like you didn't have that regular season carrot out there. It was always about getting ready for the playoffs and the state tournament. And it turned out to be a good thing because you had really good coaches, I think, who knew how to make that road get to ultimate success. But now, and it's called the Wisconsin Valley Conference, which I found very interesting. Because at least that's what it was listed as on Wisconsin Prep Hockey, so I'm assuming it's right.
Yep.
But you have the Storm, Northern Pines, Wisconsin Valley Union, Medford, and Black River Falls. And I know that Black River Falls, I think it's supposed to be pretty good this year.
Yep.
But it's quite a trek.
And we're part of that when they were kind of still independent, and they kind of did those end-of-season independent awards. I think Black River Falls was part of that group with the Storm.
What's your take on the Storm being in the conference? Do you think it's a good thing for the team in terms of having that conference and then all conference and all that good stuff? What are your thoughts?
I definitely think it's good for that. I think the rivalries are good in establishing that and playing people twice. I think it does give you a very set system for those postseason accolades and honors, which I do think are important to athletes and families and quite teams and coaches as well to be able to recognize that. I would say hockey in particular is a sport that keeps really close track of stats and those sorts of things. If there is a drawback to it, it kind of part of your schedule is now set. And if there's a team that in that conference that's really down, which we know traditionally there's one or two that are, you kind of have 2 spots on your schedule taken up with games that are tough games to play sometimes.
Right.
But who you play and how many you play and what the sportsmanship thing to do in those. So a lot of it'll come down to, and all these teams have good coaches and will demonstrate good sportsmanship. But I mean, if there is a drawback to it, I would say that is probably it too, having worked with a long time with Coach Brandt as a AD and a fellow head coach and who's now the athletic director too. Part of what has made West hockey really strong over the years is what their non-conference schedule looks like. So if I went to Coach Brandt and said, we're getting rid of 6 of those games because we're going to another conference and playing some teams that maybe we don't believe are as competitive, that he would not have been in love with that. So, and part of that's kind of what the way the Storm schedule has always been built as an independent too. You made sure you played the best teams in the state, oftentimes either through tournaments or just through that schedule. You picked the best teams and you played them a couple times. So a little bit of that is gone in this, but I do like the idea of having rivalries. And in this day and age, transportation's a huge deal too. So playing a little closer to home on Tuesdays and Fridays maybe isn't the end of the world or a bad thing either.
That's the hardest thing I think for the Storm program is because you have the co-ops and you don't have a game where it's Wausau West against Wausau East or Wausau West against DC Everest or whatever it may be. It's and of course the Wisconsin Valley Union being Stevens Point and
Marshfield Rapids.
Marshfield. So again, the whole conference is 2 teams, so you have to find these other games.
And if you look at where we're going, Pines used to be its own team, and at one point Tomahawk had a standalone, and Rhinelander and Anago were a team. So there used to be 5 or 6 teams or co-ops in that Great Northern Conference, and they're down to just a couple of teams now as well. So it's definitely a challenge. It's definitely a challenge for girls hockey statewide, I think, at this point. Like in a perfect world, the sport would be growing. And I think when you look at youth teams, you can certainly make the argument that it does continue to grow. We have not found a way yet to get it to grow at the high school level, and part of it is the whole co-op conversation, but I'm not sure we have enough time to talk about that.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about different issues when Coach B.J. Brandt, or I should say now Athletic Director B.J. Brandt, because we have the no current coach rule here on this program, but he'll be our co-host starting next week. But also one thing that about hockey is there's been a lot of, I think, disgruntlement with the WIA not having a person in charge of hockey that is trying to grow the game. I think there's a new guy that's in charge. There's been some positivity around that. And again, and you as an athletic director for a number of years, what is the role right now for the WIAA and these, and the sports and trying to grow sports, whether it is football, whether it is hockey, whether it is basketball, baseball, whatever it may be? What's your sense, the relationships between the schools and the WIAA and growing high school sports in Wisconsin?
Well, ultimately, I think overall, I would say there's a good relationship between high school athletics and the WIAA. There's always going to be some disgruntled folks out there with single interest or single issue concerns. But I do think that the WIAA has what the best interest of high school athletics in mind when they make most of their decisions. And when you look at some of the bigger topics they've been trying to tackle over the last 5 to 10 years, it's competitive balance. I would say there's a lot of people out there who said they haven't gotten it right yet, but I don't know as though you'll ever get it to a point where everyone will be happy.
There's always going to be a largest school, and there's always going to be a smallest school.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
That's
and the good teams are going to go up and come down, and you're basically in competitive balance. You're basically where a team gets placed is based on past success. And if you graduate a bunch of kids, you're kind of turning that maybe tougher schedule onto a group of kids who aren't nearly as good. So
one of the topics we're going to be talking about in the winter, I'm sure, is Tomahawk.
Yep.
Because they won a state championship in hockey last year. They have been moved up to Division I. They're now in the sectional of death.
Yes.
with Wausau West and Stevens Point and Hudson and Eau Claire Memorial
and there's part of me that wonders as you bring up the sectional of death, is there, after it gets a few more years under its belt, is there some validity to what they're doing in football in the playoff structure? And would that be a benefit to the hockey sectional, right? If you kind of assign points to the victories and their opponents and strength of schedule and all those things, and at the end of the year, the 4 best teams in the state are the number 1 seeds, as opposed to geography playing such a big role in it. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think going back to your initial question, those are the things, right? There was a big issue 2 years ago in the high school playoffs, and they essentially immediately came up with a new solution and changed it for the following season. We talked about competitive balance. There's a committee, I think they're in year 3 this year, committee that tackled out-of-season coaching contact and the number of contact days. And the next thing they're talking about is setting the calendar and the season start and end dates. Is the spring season so goofy and dependent by weather and so much more affected in the north than it is in the south? Game maximums, right? Do we really need to be playing 26 games in any of these sports? Right. And especially in the winter season when you have cancellations due to weather and those sorts of things. So I think they're trying to do a good job. I think when you have the disparity in enrollments from the biggest schools in Division I to the smallest schools in D7 and D4 and D5, depending on the sports, it's a challenge. But I think for the most part, going back to the initial question with co-ops, that one has not been tackled yet. I know when lacrosse became a WIA sport a couple of years ago, there was a lot of tough talk about how we're not going to let happen to lacrosse what happened to other sports. And I would say 2 years in, that's been more talk than action, because we do see some pretty big co-ops in lacrosse, and there hasn't been a lot of action to break them up or to make changes. And I think if you truly want to grow the sport, or grow the numbers of teams in these sports, like specifically hockey, lacrosse, that's really the only way to do it. And people want to win. People are competitive, and when you break up co-ops, you are breaking up some really successful competitive programs and teams, and those are going to be tough pills to swallow.
Here,
yep.
Right? You know, it's
Yep.
like it's much easier to complain about than to fix, right?
Yep, for sure.
Real quickly, we did start girls basketball last night. We had the Wausau West game against Pacelli. Pacelli looking very solid, 72-39. Marathon, I think, is a team to keep an eye on. Jeff Schneider's team beat Loyal 79-50 last night. We'll have plenty of time next week, and starting then next week, we'll go down the line with a lot of scores. But I guess to wrap it up, let's kind of put a bow on the fall here, because we'll be, again, changing our co-host starting next week. What's jumped out this fall? How do you look at the whole fall? Maybe you can look at the fall in football generally, and maybe look at our shows.
Yeah.
What you liked, what maybe people that you really heard some things that you were interested in. Just final thoughts here. We have a few minutes.
I think again, and I probably have said this each year in this part of the conversation, is my favorite part is our guests, right? I love hearing from coaches and what they're doing and what makes their teams tick. I love hearing from our athletes, and I think you do a phenomenal job of choosing them and setting it up and getting them here. But I really think that's kind of the heart and soul of what we do, is we want to bring attention to the great things that are happening in high school athletics in our area. And I think who's giving us those great things is our coaches, and more importantly, our student athletes. And I think that's a great thing. I love hearing and learning more about different conferences and within those conferences, the different communities that maybe we don't always hear as much about being centrally located here in Wausau, the Edgars, the Stratfords. One of my favorites is talking to Abbotsford about their program and the dynamics and the mix of their community. So I think that's kind of been it. I think some underlying things this year are, it was very interesting to follow the Great Northern Conference and how the top of that conference kind of shuffled around a little bit. It was interesting to see Stratford, after 3 gold balls in a row, have a rough start, but kind of come on strong. It's great to see Edgar get bumped up and still have the opportunity to win their 3rd championship. We've talked about it, that maybe the Wisconsin Valley Conference was down a little bit this year and has some work to do to kind of get back to where the Big River side of the conference is, and kind of a team from this area make a run to the deep into the playoffs and possibly down to Madison. So and I guess probably the overall theme is fall didn't really feel like fall. There's a lot more summer type football games than there was fall football games.
It was a terrific run.
Yes.
I tell you, I tell this to people, and I'm not just saying this, I would not want to do the show by myself, because you add a lot. In the past, Jeff has added a lot. Gress, Paul Novinsky's added a lot. Every time I've had BJ Brandt on, he's added a lot. Without my co-hosts, the coaches who had that perspective, it does not work. I mean, nobody wants to hear me talk for 2 hours, and that's not what I want to do either. So I appreciate you coming in, being so prepared, and adding so much to the show again. And I certainly hope that when August rolls around next year, that you'll be back again.
Absolutely. My last shout out is making sure everyone listening, and both on the radio and on the streams and on YouTube, understand what a gift and a blessing we have in Chad Holmes. Like, there isn't a lot of this left. There's not a lot of great quality radio. I'm not sure there's any locally guys who are as passionate about high school athletics and not only do it, they don't just show up and put headphones on and talk. They know the athletes, they know the stories, and are absolutely passionate and know the names. So we are very fortunate to have you, and thank you for everything you do, Chad.
Thank you, and we'll be back next week with BJ here on WXCO.